Hello, May. Thank you for being here today. Today's episode, we will explore the evolving role of corporate boards in shaping resilient businesses and also unpack what truly makes a board effective. From your experience, how would you describe the role that a board can play in contributing especially to the sustainable growth of businesses?
Let me first of all set the context. I think boards are not very well understood. And the reason for this is that we handle a lot of confidential information. And therefore, it looks very opaque what we do. And secondly, boards are only featured when there is a problem. If things are running smoothly, you never hear about the work of the board, but it is very important work. I think the key for me is sustainable growth. So the board, being the governing body of a corporate, has got, in my view, three very important roles. I think the first is to work with the management to set and tweak the strategy. Because you talk about sustainable growth, this is something that we need to revisit and make sure that the company is on the right path. The second point is to make sure that during the execution of the strategy, the board oversees the management, make sure that they are on track, but also are sticking to the regulatory frameworks that they are committed to. So whether it's a bank, an insurance company, a power company, all these are regulated businesses. And the last key takeaway for me is really about balancing the interest of all stakeholders. And this is particularly important in the Asian markets where founders, families still own a big chunk of the equity. And as an independent non-executive director, I've always got to wear the sort of independent hat and say what makes sense for all shareholders, not just the families, but also other stakeholders, you know, the banking relationships, the suppliers, the community. All these things contribute to sustainable growth of the company.
And as the board comprises actually different directors and different individuals, I'm sure that the board cultures would vary from one board to another. So how can the board set the tone to drive the desired corporate culture across the whole organization?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because sometimes is it the corporate culture that is influencing the board, or is it the board influencing the corporate culture?
Yeah.
Because, as you know, corporates have been in existence for much longer than the boards, because boards turn over. But there must be, an influence to want to work together. I think that's the key. So a board culture, to a certain extent, is being influenced by the corporate culture of the organization. But at the same time, the board is the one that sets the tone, because the corporate culture is one that influences employees, they influence management decisions. But at the same time, the board is there to make sure that there are enough checks and balances. And, corporate culture, sometimes people just love to agree with each other because they don't want confrontation. That's not healthy either. You have to make sure that you have enough people on the board who are prepared to speak their mind and not just go along with the flow.
So, May, you just now mentioned about how important it is for the board members to work together. So, on the point of board effectiveness, can you name 3 key drivers that will make a board effective?
For an effective board, you really need to have a good working relationship with the management. And it's not just the chairman, but really every single board member has to put in the effort to get to know the management outside the boardroom. It's not about, we do the meeting, finish, that's it until the next quarter. To do the work well, a lot of the heavy lifting, the second point is that a lot of the heavy lifting is done at the committees. So to make sure that every single board member is also a member of the committee. So they get to know the more detailed workings of the company, and that frees up the time at the board so that we can discuss more strategic directionally, talking about geopolitics and impact on the company. So that's the second point, how to organize the workings. And the third point is really composition of the board. To make sure that you have the right skill sets within the board so that there is good, effective discussion. They bring different skill sets, different experiences to the boardroom, and with that, impart that knowledge to the management.
So that the point you mentioned about the composition and also the board committees actually leads me to the next question on diversity of thoughts, because we all know that to have effective board discussions is really important to have people or board members from different backgrounds, different experiences. So as you are also chair of a nomination committee, so what do you think the nomination committee can play in terms of ensuring the diversity of perspective is well represented on the board and avoid the group thinking at the board level?
Yeah, I would say the nomination committee is usually very underappreciated. It doesn't meet very often, but the impact is probably, I would say, huge, the most significant, because you are not just building the board today, but also planning for the future. You can go outside and go get McKinsey, you can get, one of these consultants, but you really do need somebody on the board who's close enough to the strategy and will want to have a 9-year view as to how the direction of the company should take in terms of embracing technology, for instance.
How would you balance between providing the strategic direction or the guidance at the board level while allowing the management the autonomy to execute or to implement those plans?
Yeah. You know what, Kelly, that's one of the toughest things for directors when they join the board, because most of us have been in the C-suite and we're so used to executing that we feel that we want to do the execution ourselves. But the key is really to take a step back and say, this is a different role. You are now more a mentor. You are providing direction, but not the execution. The strategy has to be formulated and owned by the management. They have to be committed to it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But where the board directors come in is, having had the experience, they work with the management to stress test the strategy. And one of the things that all companies should do is have a strategy offsite at least once a year. You may say, the strategy can't change every year, but you have to meet regularly and say, last year we committed to do this. Where are we? How much have we done? But it has to be, as I say, owned, and management has to have accountability, and their KPIs have to reflect that.
Yeah, that's true. Any other softer side of tips in terms of how the board and management can work together, especially in terms of building the trust and in order to unlock the long-term value of the company?
When I started on boards, many people tell me, oh, it's only 4 times a year that you appear at the company. But unfortunately, that's not the case. First of all, you sit on a lot of committees. And I am in and out of the company at least 10, 20 times a year. And part of the reason is actually you have to get to know the business, visit the factories, visit the shops, visit customers, to get a good grip of the external perception of what the company does. Secondly, get to know the management intimately, have a coffee with them, have lunch with them, get to know the family background, because that's the only way you can appreciate what the management are experiencing in terms of executing their role. Otherwise, it's very difficult for you to do an effective job. If you just appear, after every 3 months, you don't get to know them. You don't know what makes them tick. So I would say, first and foremost, really get to know the stakeholders.
So it's really more than just attending the board meetings.
Definitely.
It's getting to know the company.
I wish it was, but
management.
it's taken a lot more time than I expected.
Yeah. So can you also share with us an example, like how a board you served on, how they successfully navigated through a period of change or some form of transformation?
Yeah. One of the things that tends not to be discussed very widely and is clearly sensitive is succession planning. When you have the CEO as part of the board and you talk about succession planning, he or she will think, oh, they're trying to get rid of me. But it is very important because coming back to what you were saying about sustainable growth, a company's growth is not sustainable if you haven't got a pipeline of talent coming through all the time to, replace, refresh the current talent pool. So I've experienced changes in CEO, and in both cases, we have found internal candidates, which gives me a lot of comfort in that there is good succession planning within the company. But that's not always the case with many listed companies. So I would urge all companies to pay a lot of attention to nurturing their talent pool and also focusing on succession planning, because when there is a change, there could be a lot of disruption within the company.
Yeah, I think what makes a company stands out from the others is that the board is prepared for the unexpected to come, right?
Correct.
So to wrap up, what advice would you give to aspiring board members on preparing for or even excelling in their board roles?
Ask yourself, what is your motivation? Why do you want to be a board director? If it's purely for status, I would advise you not to do it because it's got to be, you've got to go deeper than that. So just to share my own motivation, when I retired from banking, I wanted to give back. I've had 30, 40 years of valuable work experience, and as a CEO, I want to create some impact and share this experience. That was my first motivation. Secondly, my own personal development. I wanted to make sure that I was still able to grow, go learn about new industries and meet new people. And thirdly, it's just to stay networked, to know what is going on. Because when you're retired, it's quite easy to not to know what is going on, to learn about the latest in technology and trends and so on and so forth. So for me, those were my three reasons and motivation. And as a result of that, I think I probably spent more time than most because I have a curious mind and I wanted to research more. And I also love working and networking with people. So getting to know the management better. I actually see quite a lot of them outside the boardroom. Question is, some people say, oh, getting too close to them. No, so what? it's not adversarial at all. You know, you have to work with these people. It's not that you are the one checking them, so you can't get to know them. You want to get to know them. You want to do what is best for the company. You want to cooperate and really help them as much as possible. And the board directors have got so much to give. They've got 30, 40 years of work experience, and each time we make mistakes in our career, we learn and we pass on that learning to the management.
Yeah. So thank you so much, May, for all your wonderful insights. And I am sure my audience will also enjoy this session as much as I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.